Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you all for zooming in, so to speak, and welcome to the October 6th Planning Commission, Stillwater Planning Commission meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Normally, we begin with the roll call of the members of the board, and just as a note, Mike Coopert has stepped down, but we have a new member. Jana Phillips. So I see you there. I'm delighted to have you on board. And we'll go ahead and have a roll call of the board member.
Mr. Rickelman?
Here.
Mr. Shanahan?
Present.
Mrs. Durham?
Here.
Mr. Allred?
Here.
And Mrs. Phillips?
Present.
Excellent. Thank you all. Our first item for business this evening is, as Mike was the chair of the Planning Commission and he has stepped down, we need to elect a chair and vice chair from the board. So
I'd like to make a nomination that Brad Rickelman be chairman.
I'll second that.
all right, it has been, do we want to do them together or do it one at a time, or?
I'd like to nominate Jana Phillips as vice chair.
Let me back up a little bit. Let's do the chair election first, and then we'll do the vice chair.
Oh, I thought
Right.
Brad said
fine.
do
Nope.
them both at once, but
Yeah, we'll do them as they are. We have a standing motion on the floor that Brad Rickelman be the chair of the Stillwater Planning Commission. All in favor, or we'll now do a vote. Sorry. Yes.
Chelsea, on mute.
Mr. Rickelman?
Yes.
Mr. Shanahan?
yes.
Mrs. Durham?
Yes.
Mr. Allred?
Yes.
And Mrs. Phillips?
Yes.
5 yes.
The motion passes 5 yes to no there. So I will be the chair of the committee through the end of our year. Right? So for vice chair then, sorry.
Okay, now I'll nominate Jana Phillips for vice chair.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that Jana Phillips be elected to vice chair. Jana, is that being your first meeting? I just want to make sure that you saw that train getting in there. So
I saw the train. I have no objection to that.
okay, all right. It has been moved and seconded, so we'll now have a vote. Call the vote.
Mr. Rickelman?
Yes.
Mr. Shanahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Durham?
Yes.
Mr. Allred?
Yes.
Mrs. Phillips?
Yes.
5
Thank
yes.
you all. The motion passes 5 to 0. That means that Vice Chair Jana Phillips. So I'll be the chair, Jana's vice chair, and the rest of the commissioners. So I appreciate that. Thank you all for doing that. So then let's go to our public hearings or our discussion for the evening. The first item for business this evening is a land use for discussion and possible action, which is IH Development LLC final plat SUB 20-14, requesting review and approval for the final plat of Park Valley Addition to create 329 new single-family residential lots on property currently addressed as 1823 West 26th Avenue and zoned residential single-family small lot RSS. Staff.
Members of the commission, Brian Hurt, element final plat. No preliminary plat was approved. 12/20. Park Valley Edition. area in question is inside the hatch pattern. Subdivisions, it's a section that were together. This is Park Valley one. Side yellow is property. What it looks like at the section right now at Western Southwest section property. As we said, this is a proposed final plat. The preliminary plat took in the entire area. First section that's proposed for final plat, south end of the property, off of Western, back into the heart of the subdivision, outlots for drainage, but up into area that is at flooding up floodplain. He also connections go to subdivision proposed to the south. Next slide. So overall, the preliminary plat had some issues that staff had concerns about. Just for you back in May, those issues: water pressure. Staff from development worked with the engineers for the applicant. Water pressure issue, have a minimum SI. Dealt with sewer connection. Will be gravity flow to a lift station, and part of that to the north of where it will gravity flow. Section along, but it about sidewalk area along. Well, sidewalks on the that. Staff answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Not seeing, so am I correct?
Yes, I've got some questions.
Oh, okay, very good. Thank you.
From my audio, it sounded like Ryan went in and out at a couple of points of the presentation.
Same here.
Did staff say that the sanitary sewer service that was going to be addressed by gravity flow or a lift station?
Yes, they are looking at lift station. So when this subdivision, as well as the subdivision to the south, are at full build out, there will be lift station that's coming in as part of this phase, the way staff understands it, to connect up to a gravity main along 26. What we've been told is that station have the capacity to serve not only areas that can't do gravity flow within this development, but also development south.
Okay. Water pressure. What were the improvements made to the system to get it up to 40 psi?
My understanding from talking with water utilities, I'll let the applicant's engineer that in more detail to give you a more detailed analysis, those steps. But what staff has been told by water utilities staff is that have the pressure, they have the different work to boost capacity in that part of the, and that's what community development staff is being.
Okay. Another question regarding the traffic. in regards to the traffic, we had discussions both in the early March session and the May 8th, I believe it was 12th session. Residents discussed their concerns about the amount of traffic, additional traffic that would be generated as a result of the development. I don't have in my notes that a traffic study was requested. Was one requested?
So we asked, originally minded both the engineer project as well as potential subdivision to the south. They need to do a traffic impact analysis. We also encourage them to do one jointly, give decision makers better idea of what they are. It did not have the traffic impact analysis, so we reminded them that back to it. So at this point, we do not have that.
Was a deadline given for that being submitted?
Technically, at the time you submit final plat, it's done. Not done before. Case where they've had a lot of time to give that to us, and just quite honestly told staff that they forgot about it. They're working on that now. Staff is totally comfortable. A item. Not seen the item yet. Traffic study yet either. They've had some difficulty together based on numbers. COVID, traffic counts. That's the last discussion we've.
I'm sorry, there is several points in that, what you were saying that weren't audible to me.
Okay,
Is there a way
I'll
to
try and repeat it. Right now, we have not received the traffic impact analysis. They are trying to work through some different variables regarding that. Because of that, we have not had a chance to traffic impact analysis from the applicant at this point. They technically should have given it to us at the. They forgot to do that. So if commission wanted to lay that or postpone this item for 30 days in order to give them to complete that, it's something staff would agree.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, did that answer your questions that you had?
Yes, it did.
Yeah. And it was chipping out, so I'm glad at least we got a confirmation on what that last comment was. Do any other of the board, the commissioners have any questions for staff before we allow the applicant to speak, make their presentation? Seeing none, we'll open up the public hearing and hear from the applicant or representative thereof, if there's somebody out there for them.
Good evening. This is Mohammed Khan with SMC Consulting Engineers, 815 West Main, Oklahoma City, 73106. Thank you for allowing us to present this item to you. Just briefly, I'll describe the scope of work. Hopefully everyone can hear me clearly. That's good news. I see heads of big. Well, what we have in front of you is a part of the overall preliminary plat which was previously approved. And the final plat in front of you is proposed for approximately 58 lots, which is substantially reduced than what was preliminary plat approved with a conceptual or preliminary design of overall utilities. So as part of this preliminary plat, for the final plat, the development in front of you, what you have is focused on the south or southern half of the overall property. So the only access we're proposing is off the Western Avenue, and as well as a access to the south to the future development of Fry Addition. So in terms of briefly describing the access, utilities, and drainage, I'll go over those items and I'll be happy to take questions at the end of it. So what we have is a network of internal street for this final plat with one access point to Western Avenue and one access point to the south boundary, which will be extended into the future development of Fry Addition. So for this final plat, there are two access plans. We have a network of water lines, different in sizes, 8-inch and 6-inch water lines, which are shown in the preliminary plat. The construction improvement plans have been submitted to city for review. I'll briefly address the water question and the water pressure Commissioner Shannon had about this. So yeah, in the preliminary plat, there were some discussions about low pressure, and there were different pressure zones around this site. So my understanding is, and looking at the construction plans, that on the west side of the Western, that area had a high pressure zone. So a proposed connection is shown for the water line to get the benefit of high pressure zone area from that side, and then meet the cities as well as DEQ requirement. As part of the submittal to city with the water line improvement plans, our engineers have also done the DEQ pressure analysis. And I'm looking at the DEQ report, which was submitted to the staff with the construction plans. And what I read is that the normal static pressure for this subdivision will range from 55 psi to 79 psi. So that is well above the minimum required pressure of 40 psi, what was initial comment was from the staff. So that issue has been resolved. Now in terms of sanitary sewer services to this final plat, there is a combination of 8-inch water lines as well as 12-inch water lines. Also, a provision is made to allow the future construction or future connection for the Fry Addition, which to the south. Now, the sanitary sewer line, which runs within the subdivision itself, are all gravity sewer lines. But obviously, the plan is to provide a lift station due to the limited capacity on the immediate downstream of the project. So I see in our submittal that the lift station plans were submitted to city, including the DEQ engineering reports were also submitted to the city. That review may not have made to the desk of Mr. Harkins, but based on our submittal, I see that that information was submitted to city back in August. So the plan is to serve this development with gravity sewer with combination of different 6 and 8-inch and 12-inch sewer line, but then it'll all drain to the lift station. And then from that lift station, there will be a force main, which will continue to the north. And then it'll tie into the 24-inch main sanitary sewer, which has adequate capacity to receive the flows from this subdivision, as well as from the development to the south of. Moving on to the drainage system, the site itself kind of typically drains in 3 directions. Therefore, we had proposed 3 detention ponds. And those ponds were numbered like pond A, B, and C. Pond A, which accommodates the development in the northern part of the site, that would be the future pond. I think our preliminary plat addresses to get the benefit of detention pond B, which is located in the southeast portion of the final plat. In the southeast corner of the final plat property, there is an existing unnamed tributary to Stillwater Creek, runs through that area. That is part of the FEMA effective floodplain and special flood hazard area. Our grading design addresses the conveyance receiving the stormwater flows from these 58 lots, including any area which is part of the site, and then carry it to the detention pond, retain it as part of the stage storage detention analysis, and then route it through the outlet structure of the detention pond to the unnamed tributary of Stillwater Creek. And looking at the drainage design, we have substantially lowered the historical flow rate from our side for this phase of the plat by using the detention pond B. In the future, when subsequent sections are added, those 2 additional detention ponds will be added as part of the future development of this subdivision. So there will be a network of a storm sewer system for the internal streets where curb inlets are proposed. And the idea is to carry the stormwater flows from the developed condition for these lots, and then through a network of curb inlet and storm pipe, take it to the detention system, and then route it to the downstream receiving system of Stillwater, unnamed tributary of Stillwater Creek. As far as the discussion on traffic impact analysis, I had spoken with our traffic engineer. Now our lead engineer, Chris Anderson, is out on an assignment, so I'm filling in for him. But based on what I have read in our files, the traffic engineering consultant out of Oklahoma City is addressing the traffic impact analysis for the Park Valley addition, as well as for the Fry addition to the south. So in holistic approach, they are looking at the overall area there. Due to this COVID, I was told that the amount of traffic on the existing street system was so low that they could not have relied on the traffic count because schools were closed, offices were closed. So they had to make projections there. So they made some projections and then they consulted with the city staff. Now, my understanding is that there is some traffic improvement work going on 6th Street in that area. So they consulted with that traffic consultant who is working for ODOT. And then among discussions of these different parties, last week our traffic engineering consultant and ODOT and other consultant have come to a future projection to account for the fully developed or ultimate build-out conditions. Now, these are projections because we still do not have normal traffic on the road. But with the assistance of the consultant for ODOT, the ODOT engineering, and I think with the staff, they're all comfortable to use that traffic projection there. So having said that, as part of the traffic impact analysis, there is a study to see if there will be a need for a traffic signal at the intersection of 26th Street and Western Avenue. That analysis is going. But let me emphasize one point here, that the proposed final plat in front of you is on the south portion of the site, which only gaining access to the Western Avenue. And with the amount of lots you have in front of you, the existing traffic capacity of Western Avenue is adequate to accommodate the projected traffic from these 58 lots. Now, the idea of a ultimate build out and a fully addressed traffic study is to look at the overall preliminary plat. And that is not what's in front of you. In front of you is a final plat with 58 lots with a direct access to the Western Avenue and no access to 26th Avenue. And with the load carrying or the trip carrying capacity of Western Avenue, it is adequately will satisfy the projected traffic from this 58 lots from this phase of the final plat. Now, what I've been also told that this traffic study will be complete next week. So hopefully our traffic consultant then will be able to share it. Yeah. So that's more like an update for you and for your staff to know about the traffic study. If I left out anything, please help me to answer those questions. I'll be happy to take any question from the commission. And again, thank you for your help and your staff as well.
Very much, sir. Are there any questions for the applicant from the commission?
I do have one question, and I'm hoping the applicant can answer this. It was mentioned, so there are 58 lots in this plat, and by code, 30 lots are required to have 2 points of access to the development. With the one to the south, you indicated that one would not be available until the subdivision to the south is connected. Is that?
Yeah, the subdivision to the south, the preliminary plat was also recently approved. So in a scheme of larger thing, it is anticipated that development is also going to come in front of you. So therefore, these two access points were considered as part of it. Now, since the development, the number of lots and the final plat in front of you is heavily set on the southern portion of the site, therefore, we are not showing any access to 26th Street. And this property, as a final plat itself, has only one access to Western Avenue and one access to 26th. And 26th Street is substantially farther than the access to the south. That's why the access to the south was proposed. And there's also, and if I might add, and I think Mr. Harkins probably has also addressed that point too, there's also a discussion that is quite possible the access from the Rye addition would get the benefit of access from Parkway addition to Western Avenue. So our traffic engineers are also considering that scenario, and there is study too that if the access from Fry addition to Western Avenue will be used through Parkway addition.
So a follow-up question, the access that goes from this addition into the Fry addition, then where does that outlet go through the Fry addition? Does it go to Western or does it go to 32nd?
It goes to Western. I don't have the preliminary plat in front of me for Fry addition, but looking at the adjacent information, it looks like it goes to Western.
Okay. Thank you. I have one other question regarding the lift station.
Yes.
Do you have an approximate location where that lift station would be located once it's installed?
Yes. There are construction plans submitted for the lift station. So it'll be in block 8 and east of lot 6 in block 8, and is to the south of 26th Street. And this proposed street, which is part of the subdivision, is identified as West 28th Street. So looking at the overall preliminary plat, the location of the lift station is more like the northeast corner of it.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I would like to correct myself about the location of lift station. The location of lift station is between detention pond B and detention pond C, which is more like in the southeast portion of the site.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that seems to be the low area in the overall
That
subdivision.
makes more sense. Thank you.
Right.
Okay. Those are all the questions that I have.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we will continue then with the public hearing. Is there anyone on or in the Zoom who wishes to speak in favor of the item? I'm not seeing anything. Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Seeing none. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the item, please make noted so that we can unmute you.
I believe Jimmy Hill is probably needing to unmute.
Can't. I'm not able to do that, so I have to come from y'all, the organizer.
Mr. Hill, you will need to unmute your microphone.
The unmute button is at the bottom left corner of your screen, of your Zoom screen. Move your cursor and it would show up a microphone. Click on that and it should unmute it.
Is the organizer of the Zoom meeting, can they do that? Staff?
Is Mr. Hill able to use the chat feature to type in his questions that way? Or comments? Is that allowable?
Jimmy, this is McGrath. On my iPad, the unmute button is up on top center. Yours configured similar to mine. May look up there. Jimmy, can you write out your question and hold it up to the camera? There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Good, good.
Your name and address for the record.
Okay. My name is Jimmy Hill. I live at 2700 Southwestern, just across from the project. I did not choose this time to say that I oppose the project. That's not correct. I do not oppose the project. I recognize the residential use of that area as being proper and good. So I want to clear that up first off. I do have a couple of questions. At review time for the preliminary plat, it was agreed that a sewer easement along the access road would be platted as an easement all the way west to the property line. It appears on the plat, as best I can see it, that has not been done. Is there any objection to the plat being revised to reflect the sewer line easement all the way to the west boundary? That was agreed to at the preliminary plat review.
If I may answer that question, yes, there is a utility easement platted as part of the final plat. And that runs along south boundary line of block 1, and it comes all the way to the right-of-way of Western Road.
It does not appear to do that on the plat as best I can see it. Of course, you have a large plat there and I do not. So Can we be assured that that will happen?
Yes, and in fact, there is as part of this final plat and part of this construction improvement plans for sanitary sewer, there is a 8-inch sanitary sewer is extended.
I'm sorry I didn't hear the last part of your comment.
Looks like he froze up.
Oh, lost him.
If you have the plat in front of you there, take a look and tell me, does the plat show a sewer easement all the way west to the property line?
I can't see.
You're muted, Mr. Khan.
Okay, how about now?
You're back.
Yeah, for some reason I lost connection, so I wasn't sure how much the gentleman was able to hear me. But we do have a 8-inch sanitary sewer line all the way to the eastern right-of-way of West. And so that is the possible future tie connection if they choose to do that.
Okay, that's good. I appreciate it. It just didn't appear on the plat that the easement was all the way west. One other question about the requirement for a sidewalk. I understand a sidewalk along Western will be required, and I'm just wondering at what point in the development will that be installed? What's the timing for the sidewalk construction?
So the sidewalk along Westerns are proposed as part of this final plat, and the paving and drainage improvement plan submitted to the city as part of the final plat does show sidewalk along Western.
When will that be installed?
It'll be installed at the time of this phase as part of this construction work.
Along with the first homes?
Yeah, oh yeah, it's usually is done when the time to do the paving and driveways and everything. So yeah, these are part of the.
I appreciate that. That's entirely proper. We do see a lot of people walking along Western, which now does not have a sidewalk, you know. One other quick comment about the traffic that was discussed earlier. With the development here and other development to the south, which is considerable along Western, as you know, I think it's pretty clear, just observing the busy traffic that we already have, that there will need to be road improvements sometime in the future. If the city should desire to acquire some extra road easement along Western as a part of the planning process, I will donate an equal amount on the west side of Western that would enable the city to have more room for future development. I would donate that without charge.
Yeah. Well, I can say that we following your lead as well. And though there's a statutory right-of-way of 33 feet, but as part of this plat, we are also dedicating additional 17 feet of right-of-way to make a 50 feet of east half of the right-of-way for west. So there will be if things go plan on the west side, so you'll have 100 feet of total right-of-way.
We have
Mr. Chairman, point of information.
Sorry. Who? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, this is Ryan Harkins.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hill. I'm going to jump in for a second. Mr. Khan, can you share with Mr. Hill, the staff and the commission, how much of that right-of-way dedication is for utilities and how much can be for road?
So the overall right-of-way for this final plat shows 50 feet wide. Now, out of 50 feet, you have 33 feet of a statutory right-of-way, and there is a 17 feet of gas right-of-way. But the public right-of-way for Western seems to be 50 feet. And unless I'm reading it incorrectly, the intersection of West 29th Street, which is part of the access to Western Road. It shows an overall right-of-way along Western Road to be 50 feet.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Hill, my apologies for interrupting.
No problem. No problem. I appreciate your point. And I too want to understand for sure what we have and what we're doing. I think it is wise on the part of the city to acquire right of way while it can be done economically. As we all know, once it's developed, it would be rather expensive. So I will be happy to work with the city and donate an amount that's equal to what is taken on this development for additional road right of way. That's the only question I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate your comments. On the sidewalk, you had brought up, I get the feeling that they'll develop the sidewalk to this final plat, but not the entire way for the entire preliminary plat all the way down to 36. So they're going to do their first piece, and then as they add the next sections, they'll add the other pieces. So sidewalk will be there, but it won't go all the way down yet until they complete it. I just want to make sure that was understood, correct? Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, great. But thank you, sir. I appreciate your comments. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition or a comment thereof to the item?
Mr. Chairman, may I make another comment?
Briefly, yes, sir.
I'd like the minutes to reflect that I did not speak in opposition.
Oh, yes, sir. We'll make. Any other public comment? Not seeing any, then I will close the public hearing and ask for staff's alternative.
So in terms of alternatives and findings, right now staff has issued the following. We feel the proposed layout for this does meet generally the zoning and subdivision requirement. We know this section of the overall development does not have 2 points of access, and timing would be critical to connect a second access point to the south with Fry Farms. Once that happens, that would be essentially a loop type of access. You could come in one subdivision off Western and make a loop through that connection back out to Western. Right now, the comprehensive plan does talk about low density residential use in this area. It is a mix of residential and agricultural at the moment. The density they've proposed is in alignment with RSS zoning. With that in mind, your options and alternatives are to accept the findings and recommend approval and acceptance by City Council as presented. You can find that this request is not appropriate and recommend denial. Or if you feel additional discussion or information is needed, you can table the item to a date certain, with the idea that we would be asking for specific pieces of information or additional discussion related to specific items, and we would set a specific date in the future to bring this back up again. Questions of staff?
Yes, Ryan. Staff.
Yes, sir.
Given that there will have to be considerable infrastructure put in to accommodate this development, both for this particular plat and in the future, has there been any estimate of what that's going to be, if it's going to be low, moderate, or high?
At this time, to my knowledge, Public Works and City Engineering have not put together any cost estimates on what potential improvements would be. Right now, we do not have a lot of teeth, so to speak, in code to require additional right-of-way dedications. We try and go case by case to get that where we can, knowing that sometimes that doesn't work very well. That's the reality of the code that we have. But no, there has not been a specific cost estimate, to my knowledge, put together by city engineering to accommodate right-of-way acquisition or road widening or intersection improvement along Western.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
Other questions of staff? Discussion of the commissioners, or a motion, discussion and or motion. Seeing any discussion or comments, I'll just throw out then that it would be wonderful if we had a good traffic study, obviously, but given the circumstances and the rather limited scope of this small part of the development, I would lean towards going with the final plat for this piece thereof, with the hope that we'll learn more. Remember, traffic study is going to be an estimate because nobody's going to school. They don't have real numbers. They're going to estimate what they think. So I don't know that that's going to give us some magic answer, what will happen when, if we ever get. That's just a thought to start to get some discussion going.
No, Brad, you're right. Hope in the plan. So I don't know really at what point in time we address that. I suppose if there's further build out, we see further plats before the planning commission. Yeah, it's kind of a quandary of how we approach this at this time.
Set it for 30 more days. You know, even if we say, oh, let's give it 30 more. What are we going to know in 30 days?
Well, nothing more, to your point.
I don't.
So just to enter in for devil's advocate here, does anyone have a concern if we were to go with alternative number one, that we'd be setting a precedent, move forward without the traffic study in hand?
It's a good comment. In general, when we've talked a little bit about setting a precedent or not setting it, the general consensus has been that it doesn't set anything for any future piece per se, excepting insofar as it might convince us to allow something to be but it's not like we're saying we're allowing this thing and going forward, then this is what we've allowed. We're not setting a rule for the behavior per se.
Okay, thank you.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman.
Of course.
That actually is not true. On Skyline Estates, we waited 30 days at the preliminary plat stage, while the developer did the traffic impact analysis, and then did another delay for additional discussion based on that.
Yes, we've certainly done that, but that didn't set a precedent per se, is what her question was. Does that set precedent that we are always going to delay now? Maybe
you do run the risk, if you go forward without the TIA, that you would be essentially saying checklist items do not need to be dealt with at the time of submittal.
That's actually, yes, thank you, Mr. Hankins. Exactly what I'm asking is, are we setting an expectation, if not a precedent, that we would move forward an item without all of the checklist items in hand?
The other thing I would say to the commission is think about the plats, both preliminary and final, that you've looked at in the last 12 months and any of the issues surrounding them. Even if you move the item back to the next meeting instead of 30 days, that would still give the applicant a chance to get that traffic study into staff and we could start to review it.
I think that's a good point. We may not be able to generate the data we would prefer to have in a traffic study, but still we would have a traffic study. And we wouldn't set the precedence by not having one. And as we all know, in a legal court, which this is not, precedence does carry some weight.
Point. So,
Chairman, could I make a motion and
or
the discussion? I'd like to make a motion to table this item until the next Planning Commission meeting in hopes that we will see the traffic study.
so you mean October 20th, the date certain then would be October 20th?
Yes, October 20th.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I can make a point of order here, if you don't mind.
Okay.
I know it's out of order, but I'd like to clarify something here. The staff will have opportunity to review traffic study, and this is not the final completion of the ultimate build out. This is just a portion of the overall plat. And given the number of lots, this subdivision has 329 lots. And we're only requesting for 58 lots. And the emphasis of location of 50 lots is to the south of the property.
Mr. Khan, hold on just a second, please.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the public hearing is closed.
Okay.
You would have to specifically request information from Mr. Khan if you want further information.
All right.
Motion
Sorry.
second. So until something's done on that motion, anything else is out of order.
Okay. Sorry, sir. So we have a motion that we would postpone until date certain October 20th on this. That was the motion. I'm sorry. Do we have a second?
I second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded. That we postpone this to October 20th. At this point, we would vote on it, I suppose. I'm sorry, Mr. Khan. So I guess we'll do that then, right? Dennis, sir, is that correct?
Yeah, you should either have a discussion on the motion or call for the question and take a vote.
Does the board willing to let Mr. Khan, you can give me a thumb or something to make a comment on the motion, or should we just go ahead?
No, at this point with the motion on the floor, the only thing you can do is either discuss it among the board.
Okay, got it. I understand, sir. So is there any discussion from the board? Hearing none, then we'll have the vote.
Mr. Rickleman,
Yes.
Mr. Shanahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Jerome,
Yes.
Mr. Allred,
Yes.
Mrs. Phillip.
Yes.
5 yes.
The motion passes 5 yes to 0 no's that we will postpone or delay on the decision on this to the next Planning Commission meeting on the 20th. All right. The next item for business is Remus Construction Corps Map Amendment MA 20-04, requesting review and approval, rezone property addressed as 122 East Richmond Road from commercial general CG to 2-family residential RT. Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Ryan Harkins, Community Development. So this is a map amendment for an address specifically to 122 East Richmond. You can see the subject property here in the hatch pattern. You'll notice it is just to the west of Richmond and Perkins. There is residential development to the immediate west and commercial development and open lots to the east. adjacent to this intersection. The aerial here that you see indicates inside the yellow polygon the subject property. This would be looking generally to the north, so it has access to Richmond and then hooks around Stillwater Christian School and abuts residential property. The zoning map here and it gives you a better indication of where the RT is in relation to the general commercial zoning as well as the other zoning districts in this general vicinity. Future land use map here gives you a broad view of the community. Richmond Road would be toward the north end of town, obviously. Subject property would be, in terms of land use, future land use classification would be here listed as low density residential. The rezoning request is essentially based on information staff has been given by the applicant's agent, to rezone the property to allow for a single family home to be constructed on the property. Right now, that's not allowed under the current auspices of the zoning ordinance. So this would allow that to happen. Any questions staff can answer about this request?
Not seeing any questions. With that, then I will open if there are no questions, I will open the public hearing, and anyone wishing to speak in favor of the item, or is there somebody here as a representative for the applicant?
Yes, this is Kelly Harris, located at 923 South Lowry, here representing the applicant tonight. As Ryan mentioned, so the property is zoned commercial right now, and the person buying it does want to just build their single family residential home for themselves on this property. And under commercial zoning, that's not allowed even with a specific use permit. And so we are requesting the RT zone because there's already existing RT zoning around it. Obviously we could have done RSS, but then it would have been spot zoning. So since RT zone allows single or residential single family homes as a use by right, it still works for us. So that's why you're seeing this in front of you tonight.
Are there any questions for the applicant or the representative? I am not seeing any. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this proposal? Seeing none. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this item, please please sort of make a notion thereof, and we'll have a comment. Don't see anyone on the list. Do we know of anyone? Seeing none, then I will close the public hearing and ask for staff's alternative.
Okay. So essentially, right now, what we have issued as findings is that one, code allows for rezoning of land through map amendment. RT is adjacent already to the subject property, so it would allow, as Kelly mentioned, for a single family dwelling. Right now under CG, as she mentioned, it does not. So comp plan in this area calls for a mix generally of low density residential and commercial. This area in particular is shown to be on the future land use map as low density residential. With that in mind, you can accept findings and recommend approval to City Council as presented. You can find the request is not appropriate and recommend denial. If you feel there are conditions, you could also recommend approval with said conditions, or you can table the item to a certain date if you feel additional discussion or information is needed. With that in mind, any questions of staff?
Not seeing any questions. Is there any discussion or motion by the commission?
I move that we accept the findings and recommend City Council approve the proposed map as presented.
I second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that we accept the findings and recommend approval to City Council. Any final comments? Or seeing none, we will now vote on that.
Mr. Rickelman,
Yes.
Mr. Shanahan,
Yes.
Mrs. Duro,
Yes.
Mr. Allred,
Yes.
Mrs. Phillips.
Yes.
5 yes.
The motion passes 5 yes to no no's. And I saw a text that Vicki Jerome, you are going to have to step away here in a few moments.
Yes. My apologies.
That's fine. Just so Chelsea, so you know that. But that still leaves 4, so we still have more than enough to make a quorum should we so need. The next item for business is a short-term rental STR 0052 review of application from Cameron Moore for short-term rental property at 2712 West 21st Port in the residential single-family small lot RSS district. Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. As you may be aware, the short-term rental ordinance in the development code allows for an application and review process, as well as notification of property owners within 300 feet. A number of this application has had a number of objections, which is why it comes before you tonight. Essentially, those objections that we received before the packet went out were included. We did receive one other objection today from an individual within that 300 feet. But the applicant is here to discuss their short-term rental proposal. The subject property is here on the map in the hatch pattern off of 21st Street Court and August, just south of 19th. With that said, any questions of staff?
Does it look like there are any? Thank you very much. I will then open the public hearing, and the applicant, if you are here, or your representative thereof, if you wish to speak, the time. Don't see any of them. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the item? Seeing none, does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the item? And I don't know if y'all have a list or a way to call these. We did have an email earlier, Chelsea. If I don't know how we might. I think there are some people here that would like to speak. If you could please unmute and say your name and address for the record, I'd appreciate that.
This is Michael Ingram. I live at 2704 West 21st Court, right next door to the subject request. Am I free to speak?
Sure. Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to make sure y'all can hear me. Am I allowed to share my screen? Is that allowable? Is that a yes? No?
I don't think there's any problem with you doing that. If
Okay.
able.
I just have some slides to kind of guide me, so I'm not.
Yeah, he can present subject
Okay.
being
Yeah.
inappropriate, but
Yeah, we're kind of working with a difficult thing with Zoom. So yeah.
Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, as I said, my name is Michael Ingram. I live at 2704. I do have several objections and concerns about the request. Out of honesty and full disclosure, I don't know a whole lot about this process and what the purpose is of this process, but I'll speak to it anyways. I will say that the home is already on Airbnb and is already being rented out. We have had issues already with game day users at the property. So we've had people parked out in the cul-de-sac in front of our home that have impeded traffic through the cul-de-sac. This was back in September. That led me to look into whether this home was already being used for Airbnb. And in fact, I found it has been already a short-term rental and is being used by Cameron Moore. They have two properties. They have one that's already licensed. I think it's in the Copper Creek area. And then there's the other home on their Airbnb that is currently discussed here. So there's reviews on this property back in August. So just an idea of, it just kind of is puzzling to me why this process is happening if this home is already being used as an Airbnb. So anyways, as I said, this is an introduction to me. I have a 3-year-old daughter and another kid on the way. So obviously my first concern is safety. I know that when people rent at Airbnb, there's no requirement or background checking for sexual predators or any real extensive looking into their background. And if there was an actual resident that was a registered sex offender, they would be required to notify, the neighborhood, adjacent people. And I just don't think this is the case in an Airbnb type situation. So when we have just transient folks going in and out of this home next door to my property is a concern for me. I'm not going to read all of this. This was a part of an email I sent that I think all of y'all should have received. So this is a website, stopchildpredators.org, that discusses exactly the concern I have about sexual predators using Airbnbs to get into residential neighborhoods without having to register. So there's the website for citation of what I'm discussing. The other is property maintenance. The fence that is between their home and ours is in pretty bad disrepair. I've got some pictures of it. There's one area that's of most concern where the post has actually broken and the fence is leaning over. If the wind blows too hard, it's only held up by my crepe myrtle bush. So the one I was describing was the center picture. And then there's other boards in the fence that are falling over. My main concern is now that it's a short-term rental, that this fence is going to be maintained even less by the owners, seeing that it's going to be, like I said, an Airbnb, and that the fence is going to continue declining as it has since the current owners moved in. So obviously that's a concern, having my daughter in the backyard playing out there. So next is parking concerns. I gave some, you saw initial pictures, but parking has already been an issue when people have rented there. And being in a cul-de-sac, it is, a concern of parking accessibility. We've had people, here's some other pictures. The left picture is a person parked in front of our mailbox and also parked in front of our driveway. The right picture is someone parked in front of a fire hydrant on my property. This is a picture of my property from my driveway. And this was game day weekend of 9/27. I did ask the people at the residence to move that truck, and they did. But I foresee this being a continuous issue that I'm going to have to complain about and have people towed. So It's already an issue. I just know that it's going to be an issue in the future, so I'm bringing it up. Sellability concerns. I've spoke with various realtors around Stillwater, and the consensus I've been given is that there will be a smaller number of people that will want to buy a home that's directly next door to a Airbnb type short-term rental in Stillwater, knowing that it's going to be used for OSU events and things like that. So it's an issue for me that I'm now going to have a harder time to sell my home when I go to sell it, being that it's next door to an Airbnb, and it's easy to find out that you're on the internet what homes are Airbnb, and also this license process that y'all have that is searchable and seeable on the internet, that there's an Airbnb next to this home. So it's just going to be an issue that I'm going to have to weigh of whether I'm going to want to continue living and investing in this home that's going to now be more difficult to sell in the future. So let's see. This is just my closure. I know on the Westwood Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District, I read some of the verbiage that's in there, and it talks about preserving the original use of the neighborhood. And, my knowledge of this type of stuff is far less than yours, but it seems like I moved into this neighborhood so it could be a residential neighborhood for single family residents and not used for this purpose. And I was just hoping that you would preserve the original zoning district of residential small lot single family homes that would prefer not to have short-term rentals in the area. But so that's about my spiel. I appreciate the time. I have no idea if I went over my, I'm going to stop sharing at this point. So those are my main concerns. And so obviously I am objecting to this short-term rental. Not sure what good that really is to y'all, but I do have major concerns for all that I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thank you for your comment. Do we have others who wish to speak in opposition?
I would like to speak. I don't have my video on. Somebody's taking my video off.
That's fine. We can hear you.
Okay.
Give your name and address for the record.
My name is Rick Halley, Halley, and I live at 2720 West 21st Court. I actually am the neighbor on the other side of the house in question. I think mainly I would like to point out that we've lived in our house for 25 years. We've never had any issues with our neighbors. But now that we have a short-term rental next door, we have noise issues because our bedroom window is probably 50 to 100 feet from their front door. So we hear the door slam, we hear people out talking. What Michael mentioned about, I believe it was the September rental, that we were awoken early in the morning, that people were out on the driveway drinking beer and talking and laughing because it was a morning game. Oh, let's see. Yeah. We also are concerned about emergency vehicles. Trash, of course, if the rental is on a weekend, we probably wouldn't have problems with trash pickup, but any time of emergency vehicles, they couldn't get through when they're parking in the driveway and their cars are butting out into the circle, plus they're parking either on the inside of the circle or the outer edge of the circle. We can't get out in and out of our house because of that. So I think mainly that's it. For safety, we don't know what kind of people are going to be there. Hopefully, they're decent people and there isn't a safety issue. But well, I think that's probably Yeah, we agree with everything Michael said.
Thank you very much.
I would like to voice a concern.
All right. Please give your name and address for the record.
My name is Jolene Royer. I live at 2001 South August Street. I live very close, 300 feet. I received the notice from the city of Stillwater about the hearing. And I too would like to voice that I'm sorry, my clock is chiming, it's loud. That we bought this house as a single family home. We would like to keep it a safe, single family, good neighborhood to live in, and not have it be used for commercial purposes. We already have problems with long-term rentals not being kept up and devaluing our neighborhood. So please consider that, it's a small neighborhood that's been a quiet, nice neighborhood, and we'd like to keep it that way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak in opposition?
Sir, can I make another note? I just want to, fair warning, this is Michael again. I know I'm talking a lot. The one thing I meant to mention at the end is
you're in control of the meeting. If you want to let him speak again, you have to acknowledge that.
Oh, okay.
I apologize.
Yeah. Is it okay? Yes. Michael,
Yes, just the last thing I wanted to mention was there's going to be a trend of this that y'all might have to deal with in the future, and that's how tailgating is now being restricted by the stadium due to the pandemic and COVID-19. And so a lot of that tailgating is getting pushed into the neighborhoods and elsewhere. And that trend is being seen very close to my home, obviously, as you heard other people. So just something to be aware of, that this is that I see that issue with the tailgating getting pushed out into the neighborhoods might be something y'all have to deal with in the future. And I think this is definitely part of it. So that was my last piece. I meant to mention that at the end of my little spiel, and I forgot, and I apologize. That's my last 2 cents. Thank you, y'all.
Okay. Was there anyone else who wished to speak in opposition? I just wanted to be sure that I'd gotten everyone who wanted to. I'm not seeing any, so we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and ask for staff's alternative.
Okay, let's see. Ryan has left the meeting. And let's see. I don't have access to his presentation. But essentially what it comes down to, Planning Commission can either or deny the request.
Okay. Are there any questions of staff?
Yes, I have a question. If we turn down the applicant for this short-term rental, what would prevent them from continuing to utilize the structure as a bed and breakfast? I'm sorry, Airbnb.
They would not be able to operate it as an Airbnb because it requires a permit.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
I believe we recommend to City Council on this, on whether for approval or disapproval. I don't know that we make that final decision. Is that correct?
That is my understanding.
I just wanted to, just so you understood that, we could recommend yay or nay, but in the end, we won't make that final decision.
We also have the ability to table it for
Presumably we can table as well. Yes, sir.
Correct. For that.
Yeah. So I think approve, deny, or recommend approval, recommend denial, or table to a date certain. I think are the normal three options.
Correct.
Any additional questions or from staff or discussion among the commission?
So if I may address Mr. Ingram for a minute, this body has no authority to create any type of ordinance that would.
Brett Allred, I believe, is speaking right.
Okay.
Commissioner Allred. Sorry.
Excuse me.
There you are. There he is.
Sorry. So this body has no authority to create ordinances that have to do anything with tailgating. So just so that you'll understand that is a city council issue, not a planning commission issue. To be clear. I would like to ask a couple of questions of Mr. Ingram. So Mr. Ingram, have you addressed the owner directly and dealt with this on a local level with you and him to say, hey, if you're going to have this, can you please have your resident, your people, can you please notify the people that come stay at your house that they won't park here, they won't park there, they can, keep their noise level down, because there are ordinances in place, such as you can certainly call the authorities, you can call code enforcement, things like that, to kind of address some of these things as they occur. Are you aware of that, Mr. Ingram?
Yes, I'm very aware that there's ordinances about parking and noise, and that's going to become something I'll have to call in and complain about when it occurs. And to address your first question, I have not spoken with them. They have only lived there a very short period of time. From my assessment, they bought the house and lived in it for the minimum amount of time that they have to live in it to turn around and make it a Airbnb. And during this time, it has been the COVID-19 pandemic, and we haven't approached them at all. We've been, other than short hellos and goodbyes, that's about it. So I have not spoken with them about this issue. To answer your first question. The second one, yes, I understand parking, noise, there's ordinances, and that this is going to be something I'm just going to have to be calling the city about on a regular basis, I guess. That's what it comes down to. So that's definitely understood. The other issues that are actually more of concern don't get addressed by the ordinances that you're describing, and that is the background checks for the residents that come in there, and concerns of child predators, and also the fence that's falling over towards my neighborhood or towards my backyard. Those, yeah. So just those. That's my answer to your question.
Sure. So, with respect to the background checks and all that, that would have to go through city council. They would have to create that ordinance, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. McGrath. With respect to the fence issue, that can be addressed to the owner itself, and then you can also file a code enforcement complaint, and code can come out and cite the owner for dilapidated property, etc.
Understood.
Yeah, fantastic.
Other discussion? Yeah, go ahead.
I might make a clarification. Whatever decision is made tonight, either the applicant or the protesters can appeal the decision to city council. That's how it would get to city council.
So if I may address my commissioner colleagues. So although I would certainly have to validate and address Mr. Ingram's concerns that they are legitimate and valid and they are to be respected. My other side of that is if we deny this simply because there's one bad apple in a Airbnb bunch, does that mean that we then have to deny future ones. I mean, this sounds more like a issue that, I mean, if the applicant satisfies the requirements, which I'm understanding he does, or they do, excuse me, I don't necessarily know that we can deny it just based on who he short-term rents it to. So if they rent it to somebody for a weekend and that person, and those people that rent it for that weekend just happen to party, it's not a continual party situation where they're always causing noise and always causing disruptions within the neighborhood. So that's.
I do have a comment on that.
Sure.
It appears that the documentation that we have, it looks that a license has been applied for, but it looks like the applicant has not waited for that license to be granted before beginning a commercial business in this neighborhood. I'll also, just in full disclosure, share with the commission and those present tonight, I was a resident in this neighborhood for nearly 15 years. I moved away about 4.5 ago. It is a very nice, stable, single-family type residence neighborhood, very quiet. Mrs. Royer did indicate there have been some long-term renters that have been a little bit of an issue from time to time, and I can vouch for that. There have also been renters that are long-term renters that are very nice and fit into the neighborhood quite nicely, and I think you have that anywhere you go. If we're looking particularly at a case-by-case basis, which I think we probably should if this begins to come up repeatedly, it seems like if the property owner had in good faith gone to their neighbors and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, it may impact you. These are some ground rules I'd like to set for my neighbors and or for my clients, and they had been a responsible property owner in the past, I think that might hold a little more weight than maybe some of what we're seeing in some of the evidence here. I really wish that the applicant had been here tonight so we could hear that side of the story.
So to that end, maybe it makes sense to table this down the roads and give the applicant a chance to appear so that we can address this with them.
Certainly an option, although they were informed that this was coming up tonight and that this was something that they could speak to. I'm trying to think back of the cases that have come up in the past. The one that I remember was something to do with that the property was that they had there was some discussion that the property owner had not prepared the property adequately at that time for that short-term rental. The rest of them we've passed all the way through. So I'm not working from a lot of different experience, but I think Jenna's point that it's already being sold as one, even though there is this application, I think is an important point, and one that's a little different than a lot of other things where people are saying, we're considering to do this in the future. Here's our application. So I think that's something that at least is to a certain extent I agree with on that way. I mean, if you do it and you don't apply for the license and you're already doing it, then prima facie you're already not following the requirements of the license. Back when we first started it, yes, there were people that were doing it, and then we started this license. I get that it happened. This isn't the case, and this you can't just start doing it and then say, well, I'll get a license later when I apply.
Yeah.
I believe Councilor McGrath also pointed out that or maybe it was Mr. Gross, that if it's denied here, then the applicant has an opportunity to challenge that, correct?
They can appeal to City Council.
No.
With that, do we have a motion, or do we have someone willing to make a motion?
I move to deny.
I'll second.
Any final discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we've had a motion and a second to deny the application. We will now vote.
Mr. Rickleman,
Yes.
Mr. Shanahan,
Yes.
believe Mrs. Jerome is absent.
Correct.
Mr. Allred,
Yes.
Mrs. Phillip,
Yes.
4 yes.
The motion passes 4 yes to 0 no's. The motion to deny. The next item for business is the meeting summary for review and possible action. We have 2 sets of meeting minutes. We have the meeting summary of September 1, 2020 and September 15th, 2020. Is there any correction or a motion?
Mr. McGrath, do we have to approve each of these separately, or can we?
No,
okay.
individual.
Okay, individually. Okay. With that objection, I'll move to approve the September 1st minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the special meeting summary of September 1st. We will now vote.
Mr. Rickleman,
Yes.
Mr. Shanahan,
Yes.
Mr. Allred,
Yes.
Mrs. Phillip,
Abstain.
3 yes, 1 abstain.
I have 3 yes. That is
Just as a point of information, Ms. Phillips, even though you weren't here for the meeting, you couldn't make the motion, the original motion, but you can second it or you can vote on it if you so choose. You don't have to.
Okay, thank you.
the motion passes 3 yes. Do we have a motion to accept the special meeting summary of September 15th?
I'd like to make some corrections. So,
Sure.
So I was present via audio. I was dialed in. Was present for the entire meeting. Even attempted to vote when the clerk would call my name. I verbally voted, but apparently my audio was. Sorry. I attempted to vote. I voted on each item, and for whatever reason, due to technical difficulties, was unable to be heard. So the minutes as presented reflect that I was absent, but I was in fact present.
We can probably make note of that, Mr. Allred, in the record, but we can't make note of how you would have voted or did vote.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. With those changes, motion to, and without objection, motion to approve.
Since you weren't officially in that meeting, we didn't do a verbal roll call. You can't make the original motion. I'd ask that somebody else make the motion and then second it.
I see. Fair.
You can second it.
Yeah, okay.
Someone else like to make the motion that with those corrections that we approve the minutes of the 15th as correct?
I move that we accept the minutes of the September 15th meeting with the noted exceptions that Commissioner Aldred has made.
Second.
Catch that, Chelsea. It was a second one. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the minutes of the meeting of September 15th with the corrections as noted by changes for Commissioner Aldred. We will now vote.
Mr. Rickleman,
Yes.
Mr. Shanahan,
Yes.
Mr. Allred,
Yes.
Mrs. Phillip,
Yes.
4 yes.
The motion to approve the minutes as corrected passes 4 yes to no. Miscellaneous items from staff commission for action is the next planning commission meeting is October 20th, 2020. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we adjourn. We will now have we'll now vote.
Mr. Rickelman,
Yes.
Mr. Shanahan,
Yes.
Mr. Allred,
Yes.
Mrs. Phillips.
Yes.
4 yes.
The motion to adjourn passes 4 yeses to no. Thank you all very much. I'm very sorry about trying to keep it all organized, but I appreciate your willingness to stick with all this. And I think the point is after in November 16th, no more, or at least maybe no more. Anyway, see y'all in a few weeks.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.